Boom, 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 boom. Okay. Good evening, YouTube. Let's see here. While we let folks get in here, um, what can we go over before we get on topic? Oh yeah. If you haven't watched last Saturday's video, there is a way to win some towels in that bad boy. Some fishy room towels. That's what I'm looking for. Like these guys. And then, of course, the last of the numbered towels, the number 1 towel for members. But so there will be 2 towels given away based on the requirements in that video, and then 2 towels from next week's video, so this Saturday. I'm going to draw them all at the same time. So you still have time to get in on the previous one, and then, of course, the next one. And then the members will have super secret requirements to get in on that towel. But yeah, that's it. A little update there. Also, small update. I did something. I'm not precisely sure what I did to my lower back, so fun times. Needless to say, like, getting in and out of a chair hurts really bad. I've torn ligaments in my lower back before. This doesn't feel like that. It feels just like I tweak something, or, you know, it'd be like the same as if you, like, sprain your ankle or something, where it hurts to do stuff for a little bit. I literally was, I think, 20 minutes ago, laying on my bed trying to stretch and heat my lower back to help it be looser so it'd be more comfortable for stream. Yeah, do something very simple. I have a feeling it was while I was bending over, kind of a weird angle to grab something from my dog, that I popped it. So yeah, hurts. Bensonance. Oh jeez, come on, Kenny, you're killing me. But yeah, that's what it is. Like when I tore ligaments in my lower back, I was literally getting up out of just like a dining room chair, and I think I was about this far off the chair and just went pop. And it's certainly not like that, because I didn't feel a big pop. I didn't have a huge like adrenaline rush, but whatever I did, I tweaked my back a little bit. So it's probably gonna hurt for a few days. Yeah. YouTube, stop trying to get me to run commercials. Go away. Leo, I need that towel. Well, just gotta get lucky, man. Gotta get lucky. I mean, do what you need to do to get your entries. You'll be all right. Paul Saltero is gonna make me happy. He's getting some Bozemanite, Apes Creek, and Radnocentris ornatus in his tank in the next 10 days. Nice. Coincidence. Yeah, man. They happen. So let me get on topic. When we think of fish rooms, we probably think of something like this. This was a viewer who sent in a photo a while back. Just beautiful fish room. Notice lots of smaller tanks, right? Typically, we try to optimize the number of tanks in fish rooms. We're going for quantity, right? We want to have as many different fish as possible, or maybe we're like looking to have as many tanks to raise up fry because we're breeding like crazy. And that's going to be somebody more like this, right? Dean. We've all seen Dean's fish room in its various incarnations. He uses a lot of like 20 gallons and a few 40 gallons for a majority, and then 10s, right? That's a big thing that Dean does. So you'll see that, and then we'll put up what I'm talking about today, because I kind of have like a fish room, and then I have a couple other places where I have tanks throughout the house, right? Because like we've got this one behind me, which is, I think the pump in it is finally starting to die because it's making some noise, and it only started within the last week. Here's kind of an older picture of like my fish room, if you will, right? I often call this like the warm room or the grow room, depending on what you want to call it. This is when I used to do plants for profit really heavily. So there's the CO2 Tetra tank. But the big thing is this set of tanks. I got to remember how the camera realigns itself. Right here on this rack, we've got those 6 tanks that I used to raise fish in. And then technically above it right now, there's still 3 10s as well. So there's 9 tanks in total on this rack. And I want to remove all of them. So let me explain why I've been thinking about this and why that's a good thing. We'll get rid of our viewers' fish room here. While it is very pretty, I'm going in a different direction. So, number 1, I kept a lot of these tanks, which these are all about, I think they're like 14 gallons. They're kind of a weird dimension, but they're decent gallonage. They're bigger than a 10, but not super tall. So they have this big kind of square footprint, which is actually really nice for raising fish because it gives you a decent amount of swim space, despite being lower gallonage. However, a lot of the fish that were being kept in here, either one, I lost a lot of them in some of the heat waves that we've had. There's a number of rainbow species that I've lost a bunch of. And I'll eventually get them again. They're not super hard to find. Nothing's crazy rare. Or 2, it's like a lot of these tanks have like 1 or 2 fish left in them. And they can all live in like the retirement tank, for example. They don't need to be in these tanks on their own. So there's a couple plecos kind of throughout all these tanks. And then there's a few rainbow fish in 4 of the tanks. And that's it. There's not a lot in these tanks. So basically what I'm saying is I'm keeping a bunch of tanks because I've had them forever, but realistically, they're not doing what they need to do. And I'm not at a point right now where I have the time to start like actively breeding and raising up baby fish. So having lots of smaller tanks doesn't really help me. It actually kind of hurts me because for the most part, I keep rainbow fish. They like big tanks. Also, the acrylic that's right here that once had my zebra plecos and has had a bunch of like mixed rainbow fish, that tank's sitting empty right now. However, it's hard for me to get to the power because all the power, and this is bad planning, is behind this rack. And when I used to have my very thin roommate with super long, weird, lanky arms, he could easily get to that stuff. But I can't. I've tried. So basically, I need to tear all these tanks down and move where the like really nice power strip I have one of those like industrial, it has a built-in surge protector level power strip sitting there. I need to move it, change things. And what I'm thinking about doing is doing what I do on the other rack that is built like this, which is putting 2 40-gallon breeders on it instead and leaving the upper portion completely empty just so that I can store random stuff, whether that's fish food, whether that's making my like various like air supplies and things like that far easier to get to, whatever that may be. So, why is this good? Okay. Why it's good is I do a majority of my testing in 40-gallon breeders. They're a really good size for a number of things, both in their height, overall footprint. They don't take up too much space, but they're close enough in size to a lot of different tanks that are very common that you can get a good understanding of how pieces of equipment will work if you scale them accordingly. Like, let's say you're trying to test out the Tidal 110. It would give you a good idea of what the Tidal 55 will be like on a 20 long, or what a Tidal 70 would be like on a 29 gallon, right? All these tanks have relatively similar dimensions in one way, shape, or form to the 40-gallon breeder. Also, I love the 40-gallon breeder. It is probably my favorite tank size. Until we start going big tanks, and then probably the 150, which is the 5 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot. I just love that layout. But as far as any tank that is more reasonable in size, we'll put that in quotation marks, 40-gallon breeder is kind of my jam. I like it more than I like a 20 long, etc., etc., etc. And these racks happen to fit a 40-gallon breeder very well with a little extra space on the sides. Not a lot, but just a little bit so that there's some wiggle room if you need it. So this lets me test more stuff. This means lights, filters, filter media, so I could have some very different filters in place using significantly different filtration media and doing comparisons there. Also, it's similar gallonage in the end. Like I said, these are all like 14 gallons a piece, so 42 with the three of them. I'm losing 2 gallons of water. Hashtag wiggle room. So in the end, I'm not really downsizing a lot. I'm downsizing number of tanks for some quality. And Alyssa, who walked in a little late, just the rack that's in the picture here. I keep doing that. I'm so used to using this hand over here because I have most of my pictures here, but it didn't fit very well. Just this rack here that you're familiar with my crazy like Hong Kong tanks that I have. And I might actually get rid of these tanks too, permanently. I haven't decided that part yet. The big thing is once I clear them out, I'm not sure where I'm going to store them. For the few people that have been to my house, you've seen like the nonsense that is a lot of my spare tanks that I'm not using because power. Power is an issue in my home. Yeah, I'm not doing anything like super crazy. So Legion Necrotics, I'm taking down the tanks in the rack. I'll reuse the rack itself after I've removed the power strip behind it and kind of rewired like how everything functions in this room that is reliant on that rack, or like how some of my air lines come from the bigger air pump that I have up top. I'm not using a linear air piston in this room, but basically I want to clean off all the tanks that are currently on the rack, remove them, and turn it from 9 small tanks to 2 40-gallon breeders. Because I'm just not using the tanks, and I'd be better off with the 40-gallon breeders, because those I can use regularly. And in theory, outside of purely doing like product testing type work or maybe like CO2 oriented stuff, like trying to test CO2 regulators, I don't plan on going too crazy. When it comes to like testing CO2 regulators, but we'll take. Whoops, that's the wrong one. We'll take this picture down. We don't need this anymore. So this is kind of a short term thing, which is to say, I'm certainly not like downsizing everything I keep, but it's more that in the interim between now and when my garage is finished being emptied out and I can convert it into a fish room, I kind of want to scale down a little bit in number of tanks so that maintenance is easier. And I can do a few of the projects that basically I've put off because I've continuously had to say to a number of different actually like people, whether it's folks with ideas for videos or who've asked me questions like, have you tried XYZ? Or even including a couple companies that have reached out to me and said, hey, would you like to test this? And I'd be like, no. I don't have the bandwidth to do it right now. And I'm very upfront with folks like that. Like I will just tell them flat, no, I don't have space. I don't have bandwidth, whatever it may be, in order to do that. Sorry. Because for me, I only care so much about those things. Now, long term, my garage fish room, whenever I can build it, is probably going to be mostly 40-gallon breeders with some smaller tanks. And that leads to an interesting question of like, would I reuse a lot of the tanks that I have lying around? And the answer is probably no. I honestly, because everything will be drilled, I'm probably better off starting from brand new tanks. So at some point, I also have to like offload a bunch of the tanks I have around my house. You would be surprised how many spare tanks I have lying around. I've got too many, one would argue, way too many. My front porch is not a porch. It's like a thin walkway. And then the rest is all like fish stuff. I have two. I have a 150-gallon acrylic and a 100-gallon acrylic tank, literally just sitting on my front porch. Because I don't have the space for them and or the power in my house to run them right now. In theory, if I took this whole rack down, completely removed it, I could put up a big acrylic tank instead. But that wouldn't be useful. That would be like a display tank. It would not be useful for doing something like trying to do test work and a lot of the other stuff that I like to do for my enjoyment. John, I have more backup tanks than setup tanks. And also, if I really wanted to, I could use one of these tanks similar to how I use the running river tank, where like I can test lights or a filter and get an idea with fish in it, but keep some other species of fish. So like I could move the upper Tor rivers here, for example, into a 40-gallon breeder where they have a lot more space. They'll grow out a little bit faster. They're a very slow growing fish, so it's not going to be like fast, but faster. Is like the difference is tiny, but you know how it is, the rainbows. But give them more room to swim around and have a more dedicated tank, because eventually I gotta tear this thing apart too. I'm gonna hear it. There's like, I don't know if you guys hear it, but there's like and I'm pretty confident that's the pump in this finally going out after 6 years. Yeah, I've had that tank for 6 years now. That pump's kind of probably finally taken too much abuse. So, why is it good? It gives me an opportunity to do a bunch of stuff that I've basically had to hold off on. And two, all the small racks that I have just aren't being incredible for me, in the sense that, most of what I do likes a bigger tank. So like 40-gallon breeders are perfect. There's all sorts of stuff you can do with them. The only trouble being, if you ever need to catch fish out of them, it's kind of a nightmare. So eventually, when I'm going to have to let whatever I did to my back earlier today heal up a little bit. But whenever I get time, then I'm going to be breaking down those tanks. And thankfully, there's not a ton in them. They're not like full of substrate. They're not full of tons and tons of plants. They have very little fish in them. They just basically each have a single sponge filter. They have a light above them servicing the whole rack. And then they have heaters. So it's basically just like flick off or unplug the entire power strip that everything's plugged into. Start breaking down tanks. And since they're smaller, water comes out of them relatively fast. Now they're going to be super heavy. They all can be carried by a single person. Nothing crazy like that. It's not like we're dealing with, 75s or 55s where they're just eventually heavy or awkward in size enough that you really want to just play it safe, have extra people helping you move them around. I'm sure there are people who are younger and better at this and could do it easier, but yeah. And yeah, I'm curious. Like, I want to know, everybody in chat, what's your favorite tank size? If you could literally have only one tank size and in a room or a garage, whatever it may be, and you're gonna have like, more than 2 of them. Let's say 10 of them, maybe 20, whatever it may be. You have a space. Would you rather have 40-gallon breeders? Would you have 20 longs? You want regular 20s? Are you that person who's like, I only want 10-gallon tanks and I want like 10 million of them? Are you Kenny? You want a 300-gallon? Yeah, at least do an obvious dimension, like a 360 or something. Are you trying to do like the 5 foot by 4 foot by 2 foot, Ken? The weird one? 300? Yeah, maybe 75 gallons. The 60 breeder. A lot of people like that new 60 breeder. I do think that tank is cool. But I have a feeling the cost makes it prohibitive, if that makes sense. Where just because it costs a little bit more because it's not as common, that it's not worth it compared to getting 40-gallon breeders for me. I used to really love 90 gallons. I see Mick saying the 90-gallon. We got a lot of 60-gallon breeder love up in here. And 33 longs. There we go. John, you're a weirdo. Like the 33 long. We're going to go that route. I like the 40. 40 long. That tank is sweet. Standard 300. The back deck. Okay, so it's... Yeah, it's a 8-foot tank, right, to get the 300? 60 breeders are on sale at Petco, but how much are they when you get them on sale? Because when 40-gallon breeders go on sale, they're fairly cost efficient. I'm curious. Now I'm very curious about this. I can't fit 60 breeders on those racks. They're not big enough. They will only fit a 40 breeder, and then a little bit of wiggle room, but not much. Not enough to fit the extra foot. Johnny at Dansfish. Personally, I love 75s, but when we have to pull fish from a 75 compared to a 40, that's way more work. You just need bigger nets, dude. Just huge nets, like the size of your torso. Just the whole size of the tank, front to back, top to bottom. Just scoop all the way across. You'll get them all. I know what it is. When I used to try and catch 60B is 199. Is that on sale or the standard price? Jeez, that's expensive. But I had to catch like young Bozeman eye fry that were all about 2.5 inches, and it started coloring up when I was selling some back when I was breeding a little bit more, out of a 90 gallon. It was a nightmare. I didn't have any good big nets. My big nets were too fine a mesh, so they would just drag too much. They weren't fast enough. So I had to use much smaller nets to catch them. Oh god. Man, chasing like, Bozemanite about this size and a 90-gallon breeder with a net that's only about yay big. Oh, it's a nightmare, dude. It's a nightmare. Nightmare. Some of that tea. Let's see. Okay. Now we'll return to the normal question and answers. If you guys got questions, at Bentley Pasco makes it super easy. $99 last week. Actually, at $100 a 60-gallon breeders, it sounds like actually a pretty good deal. Paul Solterra, I think the 55 is going the way of the dodo. Once they start ramping up production of 60Bs, they're going to be the way to go. Yeah. Right. They're a 4-foot tank instead of a 3-foot tank, but otherwise the same dimensions, which I like that a lot. I think it's really cool. The only issue is you're going to find racking more easily that will fit a 3-foot tank or multiple 3-foot tanks than you will find something that easily fits 4-foot tanks. Now, if you're doing purpose-built, you can find this stuff. Don't get me wrong. But, yeah. I wish I was in the U.S. Here in Canada, tanks are so much more. Yeah, I mean, it's an unfortunate part about Canada is you guys have to pay so much for your tanks. I was talking to my friend Ron, who used to do Friday Fish Facts, before some stuff happened, and he just ended up way too busy at work to keep doing YouTube. And he would tell me the prices just basically over the border in Vancouver, which is not that far from Washington. And I would tell him, like, dude, just make a day trip, bring a truck. Pick up a couple 40 breeders at a Petco $1 per gallon sale in the U.S. and drive them across the border. It'd be way cheaper that way. But can't do that everywhere, right? It's kind of a nightmare. Wait, how many tanks are you going to have left after the downsize? Okay, one sec. Let me count. So we got my tank. We can count brother-in-law James's tank. We have the retirement tank, and there's a little 29-gallon in that same room that we've been doing all the air pump testing in. There's my 75-gallon long that has the noodles in it. I've got a 30-gallon breeder below that has my Wob and Mooster breeding group. Then in the warm room, I have the Guppy Mansion, the Running River tank, the Angelfish tank. There's a spare 40-gallon breeder below that. Then there's kind of a mixed rainbow tank that's 40-gallon breeder. So that's 11. And then I would put up 2 40-gallon breeders. That'd put me to 13. And then where the 29-gallon acrylic is, I would be putting up probably one small tank that I have to do some test work on. So I would have 14 tanks. But right now, the 29-gallon acrylic, I don't have anything that fits that very well. So it's gotta go the way of the dodo. Eventually, I'll probably get down to where I'm only running like 10 tanks when I'm trying to get the garage going. So like when I'm trying to get the garage going, I'm gonna really bring stuff down and not run as many tanks. And then I'll be spreading out to a bunch of tanks, right? Tommy O, what is a good CO2 regulator? In general, I really like the CO2 art. I have been contacted to test a different CO2 regulator. And we'll see how that goes. We'll see. I mean, here's the thing. Any decently built CO2 regulator is all going to be very similar. My other one that I have, so I'll bring this picture back up because you can see the regulator really on common. This CO2 tank that's in the picture here, right? Over here, Bentley. That has a Greenleaf aquarium, so GLA on it. And that's a like 3 it has 3 little spouts on it, so it affects 3 tanks. And I love that regulator. That regulator is rock solid and built like a freight train. It is so good, but it's so expensive. So if you don't mind spending a lot of money, because they're very expensive, the GLA is probably one of the best quality regulators you can get. Now, you don't need to spend that much money. You can get really good quality out of CO2 Art, and technically, there's F-Zone on Amazon. Let me get you a link specifically. I gotta find the right one. So this is the one that is the preferable one, which is the Pro Series, because it's basically just like almost exactly the same as the expandable regulator that CO2 Art puts out. It is a little cheaper. They have another one that's cheaper than this, but you start getting too cheap, and I start not trusting the parts. So in this case, just a reminder, I am an Amazon affiliate. If you make any qualifying purchases, use the link that I just put in the chat. I do earn a small commission. I'll earn like 3 pennies. But I do earn a small commission. I try not to do that very often, but that gets you to the direct one I'm talking about by F-Zone. In theory, from everything I've seen and people I've talked to, it's effectively that particular one, the expandable version, is the same as the CO2 Arts. However, I have a feeling in some of the internal parts, in order to make it cheaper, some of the seals and stuff aren't quite as good. I much prefer the CO2 Art regulator. I have 2 different CO2 Arts. I like them a lot. Yeah, so Liquid Zoo OnlyFins. Cough cough, the regulator co-op put out is basically the same as those 2. Right. And I've been asked to try out a regulator that is very similar to those 2. I wonder who that is. So, I'll let you know what I think of it. Assuming it gets sent to me. It might not. I had an interesting conversation the other day, so should we air that? Should we air that? Is that what you want, chat? We'll spill the dirt. Spill the dirt on the psycho way that I run my YouTube channel. Wait, I like to look at the warranty when purchasing CO2 regulators. The Hydra Aquatics regulator I had a 20-plus year warranty. The GLA regulator has a limited lifetime. Co-op has 1 year. Yep. I haven't ever messed with the Hydra Aquatics. I have a GLA regulator. That thing's built like a frickin' freight train. It's so well built. It cost a ton. It cost me like $340 when I bought it, and that was in 2016. So, now it's a ton, right? They're expensive, but they're built really, really well. The needle valves are very reliable. They're not really wonky, so you can really dial it in pretty good on those things. And that's where some of the quality is, right? Something that's going to be cheaper, the needle valve won't be quite as good or blah, blah. But for the most part, once you're in that like $100 to $150 range at a base level, you're usually at a semblance of quality as long as it has a solenoid that you're probably going to be okay for a long while. It is unlikely that you're going to run into issues. I had one of my CO2 Arts of the 2 that I have that I got used, and I had to replace one of the inner seals because the guy I bought it from, I don't know what happened, but somehow he busted the seal inside, so it was like blowing off a ton of gas, but not in the tank. It was at the connection, right, onto the tank. So once I replaced that and did some other like minor fixes, if you will, it's been rock solid. It's been running for, I don't know, 3 years now. And the guy who had it before me had it for a couple of years. So it's great, right? I like the CO2 Arts a lot. There are a lot of companies that are basically sourcing from the same base company in China that makes those things. So they're probably all effectively the same. And there might be some differences, like some small part quality differences between, say, CO2 Art and F-Zone, and hopefully whatever co-op has built. But yeah. If you have a regulator that's been sitting unused for a few years, can it go bad somehow, like the same way to think tank seals go bad when left dry for a while? Not really. Because when you're connecting, the part that connects to the tank, you're almost always replacing that seal unless you get one of the insertable ones, the permanent seals, which I highly recommend. You get them for like $10 off Amazon. They're amazing. Little brass screw-in, thread-in ones. They're perfect. Other than that, the internal seals are pretty safe, even if air is not running through them. The most you'll want to do is have fresh tubing every time you put everything together, and make sure if you do have a temporary seal, replace the seal between the tank and the regulator, which almost always you get them whenever you do a tank swap at most places I know of. They'll just give you one. Usually they just give you a little vinyl one. You can get nicer ones, or you can get the permanent one, which is what I suggest. If you've never seen those, actually let me pull one of those up, because I think that's something that's less common for people to know about. Is the little brass CO2 seals. It's basically a permanent O-ring. They're going to look like this. There's a ton of like small companies that make these. Make these. They all source them from the same place. It's a Chinese manufacturer, I'm sure. But they're like that one I linked in chat. Again, so the FTC doesn't find me. As an Amazon affiliate, I earn a commission from qualifying purchases used with my link that I have posted in a chat. Please, FTC, don't find me. My YouTube channel can't afford it. I probably can't afford it. I love the permanent seals. If you've had one, like, they'll last you years, as long as your regulator probably will. And they're easy to install and remove. They're fantastic. They cost like $5. They're nothing. So cheap. So cheap. So yeah, that's some stuff on CO2. There was another question that was earlier. I want to make sure I check for it, because I want to answer anything I possibly can. Oh, Crayer's Fish had this mention that I actually want to go over. I have double racks in my fish room, 6 foot 125s on the bottom rack, and 2 40s above the 125s on 6 foot 4 inch centers. Ooh. That's much fancier than I'm thinking. I'm a simpleton. I just want 2 40s to make my life a little easier right now. And also just to optimize my space, because like, my little tanks aren't great they're great for a short period of time raising up rainbows, but long term they're not so great. And I can just put a bunch of rainbows in my big retirement tank, and they'll be happy as a clam having all that space to run around, even though they got to get used to new, bigger fish. And they'll be like, oh, you're the new bully. Got it. And that'll suck a little bit, but the unfortunate thing is so many of those tanks have like 2 fish in them. 3 fish in them, that it's not optimal at all. So yeah, we'll close this back out. But in general, I never recommend the regulators using it for like $60 or less on Amazon or any of those other places, any other marketplace. Once you go that cheap, the part quality is really suspect, and usually the solenoids don't hold pressure when the tank gets low. Which is to say, as the internal pressure of the tank gets low and it's running out of gas, it doesn't hold that pressure in the manifold itself, and it will just off-gas everything else in the tank. And that can be really dangerous. I've seen a number of people have that problem, or they blow out on you really fast compared to like any decently built one. CO2 are, I go back to them a lot because that's my experience of a like okay price level. Yeah. I bought a cheap JCMP CO2 regulator. It sucks. They wanted me to test their regulator. They were trying really hard. I'm going to tell you guys a story. So when I did the light thing where I found like literally the same person they were getting their lights from in China, and I confronted them, asked them, like, are you just bringing this in from China and reselling it? And you didn't engineer it, right? Is that what's going on? Because if so, I'm fine with that. Because then the story is just like, hey, look, we found what we think is the best light at the best price. We're bringing it in and giving you a warranty so that you don't have to worry about it, right? That's fine. That's a perfectly acceptable statement. A lot of companies do that with all sorts of products, right? They bring it in from China. They put it under their own brand label. It's called proprietary products. This is super common. Just be honest about it, and your customers or people like me won't lose their mind. But when you tell me, no, we engineered the light. Okay. So after that whole thing, and they were like telling me that my video was ruining their business, and they were trying all sorts of weird, like, shady guilt trip tactics. It was kind of terrible, to be honest. Finally, they were trying to increase the commission I got off of things that sold off of my, like, link, right? And I'd already killed the link everywhere. I'd closed it down. I'd removed it from every video it was on. I told them, like, you don't even have to pay me out whatever's in my account. I don't fucking care. I shouldn't have said that. Oh, well, we're far enough into the stream. Who cares, right? But basically, I was like, I don't care. I don't care about the money. You lied to me. If you can't be straight with me, I won't work with you. Period. So they offered a ton of stuff, and then they were like, oh, we'll send you our brand new CO2 regulator. We'll do this. And I was like, no, just don't ever contact me ever again. Haven't heard from them since. They tried very hard for me to either take down my videos or change the title on my videos. Just the title. They wanted the title changed because they thought that then they would be safe. Oh, been a while since one of these has made its way into chat. Naughty, naughty. Did you know you can get scammed online? Hand me a wrench. Let me smack him. That's a good point. All my mods have left me. If they've all left me. All right. You're in, Chief. Putting you in. Coach is putting you in. Anyway. Yeah. I just thought I'd talk about that story. Because, you know, it's funny. The few places, because, like, I've had Hector contact me several times. I've had all sorts of, like, every fish creator gets contacted by, like, the 8,000 cheap companies from China trying to, like, send you things that don't even apply to your channel. Like, I've had things trying to send me, like, camping gear. It's like, I don't go camping. Do I look like somebody who wants to camp? No, I specifically said I would not give Kelly a wrench because I didn't want to put her through that kind of torture. I'm respecting Kelly by not giving her the wrench. I see what you're trying to do, Bob. Sneaky boy. Quick question. Should I remove JavaFern leaves with some black dots on them from a potassium deficiency I used to have before I started dosing? You certainly can. You don't have to, but they're eventually going to kind of like fall apart on you over time, but it's not required. If you want them to look super pretty, yeah, just go in and remove them. It's easy peasy that way. Oh, I was thinking about this the other day, and it's because I went back and had watched some stuff, and then like realized I'd forgotten one thing when I talked about Fishtoberfest, is that Shanna, 503 Aquatics, who was in chat, probably still, but was at least earlier, the first day was wearing this awesome, like, Axolotl onesie, and I never got a picture of it, because I was too busy laughing at her getting pictures with other people. But she also got a free cup of coffee because of that onesie, so obviously, it looked pretty dope. Man. Wait, can you imagine if Microsoft started admitting which of its products were built offshore teams versus which were built by U.S. teams? Okay, so I've worked for Microsoft multiple times, right? And the thing is, built by is almost always, for several iterations, internal to the U.S. The way Microsoft does stuff is like a lot of long-term sustainability, which is to say, like keeping the lights on. Microsoft, whenever it releases a product, has a 10-year window in which they keep supporting a product after its final update release. So they'll support Windows X for an extra 10 years. That, once it hits that final release and it's just in support mode, and think of it like all your big Windows updates back when they had to do like service packs, right? Not like what they do now, which is called flighting, where there's continuous updates. The big packs. Once you hit that final like big release, that big feature release, and it's in pure sustainability mode, that's when it usually moves. Although often it stays with contractor teams, like what I used to be here in the US. And very rarely does it go outside of the country. You might have members outside of the country that help in certain things, but very rarely are they doing primary code development. That is almost exclusively internal to the United States. And there's a lot of reasons behind that. There's things like security. Frankly, several countries out there, China is the biggest offender. You just can't trust them to keep your stuff proprietary. They will steal it, plain and simple. They've been doing it for years. But you know, India and Pakistan have huge groups. Hong Kong does too, where they do lots of contract work and stuff like that. But often it's test work and not necessarily development work. There are other countries that are, or not other countries, but other companies that are worse about that. Microsoft, not necessarily, actually. Almost all their engineering, even hardware engineering, is done internal to the US, and then it gets shipped for manufacturing to China. I've worked on a lot of Microsoft products. I actually know that sphere really, really well. And I've worked as a contractor, so I know what they don't let me touch. So you get really, that tells you more than you might ever need to know, which is kind of weird, but yeah. Oh, Garden of Eater. What's up, buddy? How you doing, Grant? Good to see you, bud. I saw your picture. I think it was on Instagram of your like ultra white Caradinas that you have, or I can't remember the exact name you used, but they're basically like a super white. They look really nice, dude. They look really nice. I'll never keep them because I murder Neos, which means I definitely should not keep shrimp. But they looked really awesome. Jorge, what budget light do you recommend for a 10-gallon low to medium light? Do you still recommend the JCMP? So JCMP and like Hector both have basically the same lights. So it's kind of one of those things. My problem with JCMP is not the quality of the product they selected. It's the way that they approached talking about the products they selected and trying to make it as if they had engineered them when they hadn't. I just don't like those things. But yeah. It's one of those things where the light itself, like the little clip-on light, I have one on brother-in-law James's 15-gallon. It's great. You can dial it down, so if you need more power, you can dial it up. But you can dial it down to where it's low-medium, and it's great. It looks good. It provides good light. It'd be probably better on a 10 than it is on his 15-gallon, just because of the size of it. And it's got a little built-in gooseneck, so you can position it how you want. It's a great little light. If you really want to go super nice, you could get the Fluval Plant Nano, but that's not necessary. Some of the small versions of the Fluval Aquasky are a very nice light, but honestly, something as simple as like a standard Finnick Stingray, perfect. Stingrays are great. They're just an on-off light. That's all you're getting out of them. But if you want something you can control power on, the JCMP or like a Hector is fine. They're great little lights. They're cheap. They're not perfect. But for what you're paying for, they're a good little light. There's nothing wrong with that. Wait, maybe Microsoft was a bad example. I've just never heard of a company still achieve success if they admit to allowing their engineering 100% come from China. Yeah. Well, anytime you're cutting corners and cutting costs, you will lose quality. And when you sacrifice quality, the customer is the one who suffers. When it comes to software, that is always the rule. That's part of why I work in the tech sector portion of the industry I work in. I'm literally an advocate for customer experience and quality. That is my job, being a tester. My job is to break it well before it ends up in a customer's hands, so that the quality bar when it comes out at first is better. Jorge, will you be reviewing the Aquarium Co-op new light when it comes out? Yes, no. We'll see. I'm not sure how timing's going to line up with some stuff. My intent is yes, because I'll have people like beating down my comment section or my email about it if I don't. The question is just how fast I can get to work on it. But eventually, yeah, my plan is to test one, probably like on a 40 breeder. Legion Aquatics, I don't think it's out yet. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's find out. Let me go log into Ye Aquarium Co-op real fast. Let's see, Coop. Let me log in so I can see member products too, because sometimes they release stuff early to members, but not to... No, I don't need to look at my past orders, thank you. Lights and heaters. Phoenix Stingray, Fluval Plant, Phoenix Planted, Aquarium Co-op, Easy Plant LED, sold out. So yes, it has released, but it's sold out. Wait. Many parts of that light look very similar to something I'm familiar with. I'd be curious, you know, the one thing that that design of light that they have is I hate those little inline remotes, but I like them more than I like the cheap little remotes that you get that you have to line up with the stupid IR sensor. Those are the worst. Those are the worst. Okay, he opened the listing, but they haven't listed any yet, so they haven't dropped yet. Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know. It's just so you can sign up for alerts. Sounds possibly like Christmas. All you people who know way more about the co-op than I do, should that tell you like what my relationship with Corey is? Which is to say none. Oh, let's see. I'll get your question in just a segue, but there's a couple questions I want to grab real fast. One I skipped, but I mostly because my eyes got caught to something else first. Boop, 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 boop. Alyssa, don't worry, I still have your blue dreams. I know, you're the only person who'll keep them alive instead of me. I'll murder them. Because I'm so bad. Oh, man. Is that Chanasek? I'm probably pronouncing that really wrong. Because I'm not sure how to... Teach me how to pronounce your last name. But anyway, I just watched your video on freshwater sponges. Awesome. I'm glad you liked it. I actually still have them living in that same tank. Smaller than they were. They kind of go in phases where they get a lot bigger and then they come back down. They get a lot bigger and they come back down. I have a feeling the pleco in there like kind of eats them when they get big enough. I actually think there's freshwater sponges in the filter chamber of this thing. I just haven't taken the time to like really look and make sure. There's algae buildup, but you know, doesn't seem like it should be algae given the low amount of light. Where sponges don't necessarily need a ton of light, right? They need to be filtering out particulates to feed on. But yeah. VP23, hot take. Even if zero nitrates, water changes are still needed for optimal conditions. For optimal conditions? That's an interesting question. You eventually want to do water changes. The question is basically, the reason why you do water changes typically comes down to your buffer, which is to say your carbonate hardness. However, in certain places, like my water, has almost no carbonate hardness to it naturally. So doing water changes can actually dilute your carbonate hardness unless you're adding some back in. But in the end, Most fish appreciate water changes because it simulates rainfall. And they like rainfall because that tells them it's more like spring, which is the time when there's more food, and it's time to make baby fish. So, there's that. There's that. I think in general, like, we should do some level of water changing. Not just top-offs, right? Top-offs are nice, and if you're really monitoring everything and you're doing okay, that's fine, but water changes help, period. Assuming that, like, yeah, you said, granted, your water is not problematic out of the tap. Even if your water is problematic out of the tap, there's ways to treat it ahead of time before it gets into your tank. It just takes some extra work. Legion Aquatics. I want to use a CO2 with a sponge filter. Should I use a wave maker to get good diffusion? I already have the wave maker, so it wouldn't cost anything. Yeah, I think you're better off doing that because there's such little overall movement created by sponge filters, right? That in order to disperse it well around the tank, you're better off with some kind of, power head or wave maker or what have you, circulation pump of some form. I probably would, especially if you already have the part lying around. Why not? It won't hurt you. Woo! Okay, good. I've caught up. Wade, do you plan on doing any tank setup videos in the next 12 months? That's a great question. I barely know what I'm going to do in a month. So, like, when I tear down those tanks and I replace them with other tanks, I'll do some level of setup video, probably, concerning that. But the big thing is, the next time I plan to set up any level of tank is whenever I can start setting up my garage. So the first thing is, I have to get the rest of my garage empty. And that's been a slow process, but been working with my mom, which, if for some reason, Mom, you're watching, hi, love you. So whenever I can do that, then yeah, you'll see setup videos for the whole freaking garage, and then there'll be a number of tanks being set up, and there'll be explanations as to why I make the decisions I make, and blah 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 blah. Right? So yeah. So yes, within a year, yes, I will do at least a setup video on a fish tank. Probably multiple. Hopefully many. Hopefully. Big quotation marks. Kelly Foreman, Bentley, have you been to an Aquashella? Not yet. I have chosen to go to other fish events over Aquashella thus far. I will probably try to do one Aquashella next year. But as of right now, I need to get back in contact with them, but the only event I can officially say I am doing right now is I'll be in some capacity next year's Fishtoberfest, and I will be at Keystone Clash. I've been requested to be a speaker. I'm going to accept that request because I've talked to the powers that be, which is to say my household, to make sure that they're okay with it. And it's certainly early enough that I can tell my work and be like, hey, basically a year from now, I'm going to be out in Pennsylvania. That's cool, right? They're pretty chill about that stuff. So as of right now, the end of my year is kind of packed because that's September and October. So Keystone Clash, Fishtoberfest. So I might look to do something middle of the year. Oh, that I've been to an Aquashella. You can watch enough fish coverage on Aquashella to know exactly how it functions. And I've talked to the people who literally organize Aquashella and asked them a number of questions. And they've been to smaller shows like Triple Crown versus Aquashella. Chattanooga Ed, for example. He volunteers and does a lot of stuff with Aquashella. Well, Ed, James from Fish Room Fever, and I all sat down at a Waffle House and just shot the breeze, right? And we spent a lot of time just chatting at Triple Crown. And I asked a lot of questions because I was very curious to see if I was like missing out on something. There's something that I couldn't tell from like video coverage and talking to other people that I know and have been there and trust that I was missing. And the answer is no. No. I understand it, but I still want to go to one. Probably it might not be in like Dallas, even though that's going to be hot. But just because the proximity of people I haven't had an opportunity to meet yet that I'd like to do so. That's my thought process. We'll see. Things might change. Probably not Chicago, because I think that's supposed to be, again, similar timing to what it was this year, which is right when Fishtoberfest is happening. So that's a no. I'll take the smaller show because it's more. I like the smaller shows. What can I say? I like being able to sit and have a conversation with somebody for half an hour that I've either never met before or met the 1 year before. It was the first time I ever met them, and just catch up because like I recognize the people I meet. You know, it's fun. It's fun that way. It's fun that way. You can't really say what it's like if you haven't been. Okay. I'm going to dig in on that, Kelly. I'm going to dig in on that. As someone who has gone to a number of conventions for a lot of different things, not just fish. When you've been to an experience and you know enough of the events based on the hobby you're into, you actually can have a pretty good idea of how that thing functions and what it is. Love that Joe Coffee said is not a channel mod. What? Say it ain't so. Sometimes I like to give people time off. My chat is like not full of jerk bags, so it's easy for me to like monitor my chat. I try not to make people mods, mostly because I don't want them to have to feel the necessity to mod in every channel. I know Kelly's all up in my grill. I like it though. Let's dance with the devil in pale moonlight, Kelly. Let's dance. Planted Goldies. Pressing question, can I put two Amazon swords roughly the same size next to each other with the roots get entangled and ruined? I can tell you the short version of this. Also, Hector, good to see you, buddy. Shoot me an email. I need an email from you so that I have something to respond to. I think it's the video that's out. I talked about Hector, right? It's fun chatting with him. Anyway, I have done this before, and it works for a certain period of time. But once one of the two plants kind of takes over, it will choke the other one out. You're better off kind of spacing them equidistant across the tank from each other than having them side by side. Now, the way that you could cheat this is if you know ahead of time you plan on doing this, you could put dividers down in the substrate. Like how they'll use the plastic dividers when they're trying to keep sand and aqua soil separated from each other down low. And basically create a roadblock that keeps the roots from interfering with each other so that they have their own independent space. Is this a perfect solution? No. But it's a way if you want to have them closer to each other for them to live together longer term. Granted, the time where one choked out the other took 2.5 years. So it might not be that fast in the grand scheme of things. It took a long while. And those were with a pretty standard Amazon sword. And there was a third one in the area too, a Marble Queen. They all lived together pretty well for like 2 years, 2.5 years. Then eventually one took over and choked the others out. And then Pleco started eating that one. Those jerks. Those jerks. Send Ginger. They're talking about early Dallas again, so not hot in Feb if and March is 50-50. Yeah, I mean, if it's something like March, that might be doable. If it's in February, there's no way I can. I have a huge release in February that I'm responsible for at work, and I'm going to be like attached like at the wrists to my work computer in most of February. Unfortunate, but true. We are close to time. Let's see here. See if I can get one more question that maybe not, just in case we've got somebody new who's asked a question. I got Alec the Nice in here. Good to see you, man. Sometimes you're more active in chat. Sometimes you kind of pop in like tail end. Maybe you've been lurking all night. Questions about a mangrove. Cool. People growing mangroves I like a lot. I appreciate people who go for crazy things. All right, then. Wei gets to be the last question. I really like the gigantic 43-pound rock I have in my 75-gallon tank. Are rainbow fish going to injure themselves against this rock if I put them in? About to start answering that, and then I read what Joe put in chat. Joe, how dare you? How dare you? How dare you? I appreciate the joke, but killed me, man. Killed me. Anyway, back on task. As long as the rock is kind of blunt, if you will, you should do good. If it's a more jagged or sharp rock, that's where I'd be worried about rainbows injuring themselves. They might like bang up their nose. Like you'll often see like a little white spot on the front of the nose. That's really common because they'll sit there and spar with each other and they'll ram into stuff because they're dumb. Rainbows are dumb. They're beautiful, but they're dumb. But that's not bad. They recover from that really well, and then they'll just do it again and again and again. They usually don't really seriously hurt themselves. So if you have something that's more like Ceru stone than, say, Dragonstone that has really big, don't go putting like chunks of obsidian in there where it's like a razor blade, right? As Lady Diane has said. But if you have more smoother rocks or something like that, you should be fine. Don't try not to get something that's too jagged. You'll be okay. Usually they're good about not ramming directly into the rock, but sometimes they do dumb stuff. Sometimes they do dumb stuff. I typically use like Malaysian driftwood because it's big and broad and doesn't have too many pokey bits when it comes to like one of my favorite things. But yeah, I am here to apply for the position of blunt object. I'm rainbow safe. Oh, Joe. Oh, Joe. You've been having a little too much fun to chat today, Joe. You watch out. Quarry Plant Lab. Hey, buddy. I need to talk to you, too, because at some point before the weather gets too gnarly, I got to make my way out your way. Next week's giveaway is a box of Kleenex. It might be. My nose has been going hog wild on me. So, reminder, as has been put in chat, the video that released last Saturday and the video coming up this Saturday, opportunities to win 2 per video of these will be available. You can win some of the leftover Danger Noodle Fishtoberfest towels. And then for the members, you could have become a member the day of. It's fine. There will be a way to also win this bad boy, the number 1 towel. One of the only remaining individually numbered towel. So I will draw the winners on those a week from this upcoming Saturday. So a week after the next video releases is when I'll draw the winners and all those kind of things. So make sure that you've watched the videos because the way that you win them is kind of hidden in the video. It's not super obvious. It's kind of obvious, but it's not right away. You actually have to watch the video. Who'da thunk? And then there's a way to just do stuff in chat, in the comments down below, right? So easy peasy. And I think once that's done, I think I'll still have, it's either 1 or 2, I have to go recount, towels left. And I will have one of these hats that I'm going to give away in the holidays. So we'll do something on the live stream for those. Aw, thanks for the gifted membership. Now that you're a mod, you're going to gift one. That's nice. I'm going to put you to work, and then you're going to give somebody a membership too. Oh, wow. Anyone's away who's been super active. Lucky, lucky. That's what you get for asking so many questions in chat. You get a free membership. Isn't that dope? Now you can qualify. Nah? If you didn't watch that video, I'd go back and watch it. It said Ginger is now Cedar McGill. What's up? I know. You're going to make Leo jealous. Leo's going to be like hurling buddy at people if he doesn't win that towel. It's going to be interesting. Anyway, gang. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. I appreciate the chat. It's been a blast. I've laughed quite heartily, which is probably not that great for my back injury, but we'll be fine. We'll be fine. Just nothing ibuprofen can't solve, right? Especially when you buy it by, like, the Costco size. I bribe, but I'm not embarrassed. Anyway, gang. Speaking of holidays, are you doing Fish Fam Christmas? I have to figure out precisely what I'm doing for Fish Fam Christmas, but yes, I'm going to participate in one way, shape, or form. Stephen P has reached out to me. I've just got to figure out how I can participate. Leo 209, I need that towel here. Take my money. Yeah, you kill me, dude. Oh, you're killing me, dude. Anyway, we'll be back next Tuesday, gang. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, stay awesome.